All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maggie Green. I am the Media Relations Manager for the City of Kansas City, Missouri in the City Manager's Office. Joined with me today are a few colleagues from the Public Works Department and the Transportation Division. We're very excited to present to you today our bike lane implementation plan for this next year. So we will have a pretty fruitful meeting today. We've got a lot to cover. We're very excited to be in this conversation today. We do still have people joining us, so we're very excited that we have a good group joining us over the lunch hour today. Bobby, if you would go to the next slide, I'll kind of walk through our agenda for what we've got planned today. Yes, so today I'm joined by Bobby Evans, who is the transportation planner new to Public Works, Bailey Waters, who's the city's new Chief Mobility Officer in Public Works, and I believe we have our Transportation Director, Jason Waldron, also on the line. So very excited to have a good group of people who can facilitate the conversation and presentation today, and also be available to help answer questions and speak to any comments that we get throughout the presentation today. So our goal today is not necessarily a deep dive into any one specific facility, but we will be giving a high-level overview of what we have planned for bike facilities and what we will be implementing this year. So we'll show some photos and images of what the plan is, what the corridors are. We'll talk through sort of what our focus has been for choosing the candidates, sort of what our rationale, what is important to us when we're actually developing this strategy. We'll talk through that. We will be showing you the bike map, which is available at kcmo.gov/bikekc. So all the information we're going to be talking about today is available in the map on that website. I did not have a chance before this meeting to put this presentation on that website, but I promise I will, hopefully by the end of the presentation. So if anyone wants to follow along or reference our slides later, those will be available later today on our website as well. Again, we'll talk about sort of timeline and what the next steps will be. And then we'll have plenty of time for discussion and question and answer. We did have a very fruitful, great discussion last night, very similar information. We had a lot of great comments and questions in the chat, so we would absolutely welcome conversation in the chat box. Bobby and Bailey have chimed in already. So any ideas that you have, we'd also be curious to hear where you're from. If you're representing a neighborhood organization or you're just here to listen for yourself, let us know. Let us know where you're coming from, who you are. We'd love to have that information. Thanks, Sean. So yeah, let us know in the chat where you're coming from. Please feel free to add comments, questions as we go along today. Next slide, Bobby. So the next slide is just sort of housekeeping. Bobby already mentioned this. It helps minimize feedback if you stay muted. We will have plenty of time to use the raise hand function, allow people to offer comments or speak at the end. We are recording the meeting. I will also have this posted on the Bike KC website later today. So if you know that folks weren't able to make it but are interested in listening to the conversation, these will be posted online. We already talked about the chat box. I see people chiming in, so thanks so much. Feel free to share your thoughts, questions, comments in the chat throughout our presentation. We are going to try to stick to 1 hour. So if we go a few minutes over, I'm sure a lot of people have a hard stop at 1 for the next thing, but if we can't get to your question or comment by the end of the meeting, please do feel free to reach out to us. We actually are also in conversation with many neighborhoods about doing presentations to neighborhood associations. So we're trying to get those scheduled over the next few weeks. So if you or your neighborhood group would like a one-on-one meeting to talk about this further, please reach out. We'd be happy to schedule that as well. Next slide. So just some context. Some of you may be aware that there was a recent ordinance that our city council worked on and passed about a bike network plan. And essentially this is a reference just to let everyone know that this has been our guideline for our strategy and approach. We are trying to be very consistent with in alignment with city council and sort of what their goals and priorities are for bike lanes around the city. So as we'll talk about today, those pieces are included here in this ordinance. We have a 5-year vision or concept plan of where we want to be in the next several years. that's something that we'll be continuing to work on as we hear ideas from the community, as we are learning from our data about, high injury locations that we should be adding improvements. So that 5-year plan will be in development. And then every year we have, a year one plan. That's the goal, is sort of a work plan. Also, that something important that's under development is data collection, knowing that that's very important to know the changes and how this infrastructure is improving or changing ridership for bicycling. And then, of course, a piece of the ordinance language is documenting community engagement, making sure the community is involved in the process and notified before we do any installation of bike lanes. So it's important to note that staff is very much in alignment with City Council as we're working through what the strategy is. Next slide, Bobby. So before we dive into the different facilities and sort of what our plan is for the next year, want to provide just some high-level context about why this is important, why it's important to the city, our city leadership, the Public Works Department. The city's goal is to continue building out safe, accessible, and connected infrastructure for everyone. That is a priority. It's in alignment with some policies that are already on the books. We have a complete streets policy, a Vision Zero policy. Both are supportive of building out safe and connected infrastructure for all users in the city. Our goal in Public Works is to build a multimodal transportation network that supports all modes of travel. So that's connections to transit, that's better transit stops, that's ADA corner ramps and sidewalks that connect, it's bike lanes, it's all of it. So that is a goal of the Public Works Department, and we've really been focusing on that, and we're excited to talk through sort of what our strategy is to continue building out the bike network. Our focus will be, and Bobby will touch a little bit more on this in a minute, but in the past, we haven't really had much of a network, right? So our focus at this point is closing the gaps, completing the network. We built out some connections. I'm thinking of Armour Boulevard and Gillum Road has made a lot of great connections, but there's more work to do. And so that's a focus that we're having with this strategy. We also want to build on the success of existing facilities. We've seen a tremendous growth in ridership on Gillum Road. So what can we do to build on that success, build on that spine, and continue to grow that network? And then, of course, a conversation point at this point is with the city, we have our draft climate protection and resiliency plan that is actually, I think today is the last day for public comment on that plan. And so our goal with bike lanes and building out the bike network is also in alignment with the city's climate goals. So that's important to note as well. And then, of course, supporting just in general, a healthier community. So that's sort of the high level context. Next slide, Bobby. So here's our overall strategy, and I know Bobby and Baylor are going to kind of dive into a little bit more of the specifics on each facility, but what we're looking at, our goal is 15 miles of protected bicycle facilities each year. So the corridors that we're going to talk about today and that you'll see represent a little bit more than 15, I think, for this year, closer to maybe 18 or 19. But the goal essentially is to make a big splash every year and try to get 15 miles of protected bicycle facilities to continue building out that network. Of course, a part of our strategy is coordinating with street resurfacing work, as well as Vision Zero programs, opportunities to leverage more improvements, spending our dollars more wisely, making sure that we're looking at other complete streets improvements while we're in the corridor making these changes. The goal would be that we will have this annual plan and do a similar meeting like this, a similar process every year to meet and discuss with council, with stakeholders, the community every spring, and kind of line out what our bike plan, our bike implementation or work plan is for that particular year. And of course, as I already mentioned, we will always have sort of this 5-year vision or of proposed candidates, what we want the network to look like in a few years. And that's where, today we would love your ideas, your thoughts. If there are corridors that we are missing or opportunities that you think we should know about, please let us know. Today is a great opportunity to share your ideas. If we're missing something, if we should be looking at something. So that's one way you can engage with us, is letting us know what your priorities are, what your ideas are. And I'm seeing already a lot of really great chatter in the chat. So keep that up and we'll circle back to a lot of the comments and questions at the end. But for now, I'm going to kick it over to Bobby to continue the presentation.
Thanks. Hey, I'm Bobby Evans, transportation planner with Department of Public Works. And just to kind of echo what Maggie is saying about a lot of stuff going on in the chat right now, we want to urge everyone to make sure that they're being civil. There's some back and forth, and it's going pretty well right now. I want to make sure that it's continues to be nice. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about how we chose these bike corridor candidates. Let you know where our head was at some of our sort of selection criteria, operating assumptions, things of that nature. So like Maggie said, the first thing we looked at was the existing bike network. We wanted to be able to optimize that network by finding small gaps that could wind up making the network more complete and get better use out of what we already have in terms of bike facilities. We did not fill every gap by any means, and that's, it's going to be one of our selection criteria going forward, just like all of these. Other ones is another thing that we really looked at was were existing plans and studies. So, we have 18 area plans on the books. Some of them have been updated. We've got a bunch of PSP corridors and other complete street studies and things like that. And what we've heard is, folks are tired of hearing us talk, and they want to see us build things. So we wanted to follow through and honor some of that previous work and all that engagement that went associated with those plans, and start to build the things that we've been planning for so long. The next thing we looked at pretty strongly was connecting to transit. So at Public Works, we really do believe that bicycles are a great way to complement the transit network. So we call it first mile, last mile. So it's, from your starting point to the transit line, and from the transit line to your destination, we really do believe that bikes make it easier to make those connections, and we can get more out of our transit system if we use the bike network to complement it. And then we did some analyses associated with crashes and high injury corridors and road diets. So that's like a volume to capacity analysis that we commissioned to look at roads that have too many lanes for the amount of traffic that they have. There's a high correlation between roads that have more lanes than they need and places that are unsafe. And it just so happens that the strategy to make them safer also provides more space to put in protected bike facilities. And so we sought opportunities there. And I'll talk a little bit more about other ways that we sort of evaluated these networks as well. But these are the kind of the big four. So we're going to show you a ton of stuff today, and I wanted to empower the group here to be able to go and look at it yourself. We have created an online map at kcmo.gov/bikekc. And here, what you can do once you get there, this is the space that we're using to update this particular program and other things bike related in Kansas City, Missouri. And so what we've made right here is a web map associated with all of the all things bike. So right now we're kind of keeping it simple. Don't have a ton of information on there just yet, but it is a lot still. So the blue lines are going to be the year one, the stuff we're going to go in a little deeper on today. The red is the 5-year conceptual network, which is going to be sort of like a pool from which we will pull candidates for implementation when we try to meet that 15-mile mark each year. And then the dark lines are the existing bike facilities. So you can see here, some of these gaps and things that we're trying to hit. Is, for instance, just real quick, this Hickman Mills prospect, which we're going to go deeper on it's going to connect us from an existing facility on Paseo down to as close to the end of the trolley track trail as we can get. So we found a gap there and tried to address it. So, you can get in here and see some more of the sort of geometries. And when you click on these things, you'll be able to see some more information about each one. So it's actually, it'll be pretty useful. So if, all you map nerds out there, go to kcmo.gov/bikekc. Also wanted to show you a static map, just sort of how we kind of overlaid this road diet analysis. So these are all roads that are, running the numbers overbuilt, too many lanes for the amount of traffic. And then we overlaid that with potential bike corridors and helped us make our decisions. So just a little example of the kind of geospatial analysis that we're doing. And then from a table standpoint, this is what we're looking at. All right, so at the top here, I know this is a lot, but I'm going to run you through it real quick. These are the facilities that we built last year. So we're talking Gillum Road, 27th, 18th, and 109th. That wound up being about 11 miles. And then what we've got on the plan for this year one, you can see, right, we're looking at, is it on the road diet network? Is it on the high injury network? What's the area plan say? Does it connect to an existing facility? That goes to that network connection piece. Does it connect to a proposed facility? So is it part of a network that we're considering? So these are all the things that we're doing. We're trying to make sure that what we're building are the opposite of bike lanes to nowhere. They are a network of useful things. And so, we're pretty happy that almost all of these facilities came from an existing plan, right? So these are things that have been in the sort of community discussions for a while. So with that, I'd like to introduce my colleague Bailey Waters, and she's going to walk you through the proposed cycling facility on 19th Street.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Bobby. Like he said, I'm Bailey Waters, and we'll start here kind of diving a little bit into each facility. Starting on the west side of 19th Street, it's going to start at Grand Boulevard, tying into that facility, going along 19th Street to Holmes Road, and then going up north to 18th, and then connecting eastward to the existing 18th Street facility. Next slide. So just noting, I guess on 19th Street, this initial facility had been kind of analyzed in different planning studies, and initially the plan suggested 18th Street, but due to engagement and communication with stakeholders in the area, we have decided to put it on 19th Street. And it existing there are one lane in each direction and then a parking lane. And you see there are some tall buildings and some shorter ones along this corridor, as well as a few parking lots. So if you go to the next slide. For the proposed facility, or this is existing on Holmes, right? So Holmes Street, the one that runs north-south, currently there are 2 lanes headed northbound and 1 bicycle lane next to them, and then a parking lane along the eastern curb of Holmes. So that's existing. And then for proposed, we'll start on 19th Street with the proposed 19th runs east-west again. We'll have 1 lane running in each direction, a 2-foot buffer with vertical delineation, and then a cycle track. And the cycle track will run along the south side of the street of 19th. And that's proposed for 19th. And then if you go to the next, when it turns onto Holmes, it will again be a cycle track. This will be on the west side of the road, with 2 driving lanes northbound still. That eastbound driving lane is a bit wider to kind of allow for some unofficial parking to still happen there along that east curb when it gets up to tie into 18th Street. And I'll pass it over to Bobby for the next one.
Thanks. Okay, so now we're going to be talking about a proposed facility running east to west on 22nd and 23rd Street, because it kind of jogs between 22nd and 23rd between 71 and I-70. So we got, it's going to run from the Gillum Road cycle track. So that's, part of the connection all the way out to Manchester Traffic Way, which there's a potential shared use path in the works in this area that it would eventually connect to, but that's a little bit further down the road, not near term enough for us to throw on the map just yet, but it was a consideration that we're taking into account. So currently, there's a lot of east-west roads that look like this. It'll be 4 lanes, 2 lanes in each direction, and they seem narrow. It looks a lot like 39th Street, looks a lot like 27th Street, which we'll be talking about. And so this one gets 4 11-foot lanes. There's some houses here, but there's a lot of also sort of like wood line, sort of wooded areas on one side of the street. And I think it deserves to be said that what we're showing y'all is what we consider to be a typical section. We can't go through sort of block by block and show you exactly what everything looks like, but we're trying to give you what would be a fairly as good of a representation in a single snapshot as we possibly can. Because I know every street changes and every corridor is different as you're going along, but this is sort of like what we call a typical section. So for existing, this is the typical section. It's 4 lanes in each direction. Now this facility does not have the traffic volume to necessitate these 4 lanes, and for that reason, it is anyone who's driven here will know that it's a high crash prone area. It's on our high injury network. So proposed, what we'd be looking at is we would right size it. We'd get it down to 2 lanes, 1 in each direction, as opposed to the 4 lanes. And then we would provide bike service through a 6-foot bike lane on the other side with a 5-foot buffer. So we'd be able to, not only improve the ability to bike here, but also improve the pedestrian experience by providing that extra level of space between the moving vehicles and the people on foot on the sidewalks. So that's oh yeah, so yes, and this is a typical section, right? So this is on 23rd Street. It looks a lot like the area between I-70 and 435.
Awesome. Thanks, Bobby. Another critical east-west connection that we are proposing for this year's facilities is East 27th Street. And this ties in on the east at Campbell Street to an existing facility. And then that was on the west, I guess. And then the east ties into Blue Valley Park. And this is kind of a long bone of a corridor that we want to develop some bike lanes on. And so if you go to the next slide, again, it's similar to 23rd Street, 2 lanes in each direction. They're pretty narrow lanes at 10 foot each. It's pretty residential along 27th, lots of homes that border 27th Street here with sidewalks on both sides. And if you go to the next slide, for proposed, again, we're proposing just 1 driving lane in each direction, and then 6-foot bike lanes and a 3-foot buffer with the vertical delineation between the cycle track or bicycle lane, sorry, and the driving lane. So that's our 27th Street proposed design and road diet there.
Yeah, the 23rd, and thank you, Bailey. The 23rd and 27th ones just kind of come from the desire to make sure that we have an east-west connection. And that one in particular, the 27th would actually help provide, some of that service between Blue Valley Park. And then this is actually really close to Penn Valley Park. So you could go from park to park across the city. So we kind of thought that would also, connect directly to Gillum. So, we're trying to, like I said, we're trying to hammer home that the decision criteria we're using is still present in all of these. That being said, American Royal Drive is a little bit different because this one's a little bit more forward thinking. We're seeing a lot of development in this part of the West Bottoms. So for those of you who aren't familiar with American Royal Drive, it is also known as the road behind Kemper Arena. Though it is called Hy-Vee Arena, I'm trying my best to call it Hy-Vee Arena, but I grew up with it as Kemper. So this one runs, this facility would run from this, there's a very large city-owned parking garage here at State Line Road. And the jurisdiction here seems a little funky when you're down there. But so it's at State Line Road. There's a big parking garage. And then this is sort of the backside of Hy-Vee Arena. And the river is right here. Come down American Royal Drive. It curves up and then goes uphill, right? And then it would connect to another proposed facility, which we'll talk about after this, on Avenida Cesar Chavez. So this one, there's a lot of development happening down here, and we want to make sure that as these new developments come online, that we're providing them with safe multimodal service that is available to riders of all ages and abilities. And so what we saw with this particular corridor was that it's what we call 412s. It's 4 12-foot lanes. It doesn't have a lot of traffic. There's not a lot of traffic volume, but the volume that you get a decent amount of industrial traffic. So we knew we needed to make sure that the lanes were wide enough for these larger trucks, but we knew that the road needed to be the right size to make sure that it kind of allowed drivers to behave more safely. So what the proposal is, and so this one actually shows the river on the side, is we upped the size of the lanes to 13 feet to accommodate those trucks, but brought it down to 2 lanes. And then also added a parking facility. And this, another sort of operating ethic that we have going forward is we try to either preserve or add street parking wherever we can, because it is really great for the pedestrian experience. It enhances the cycling experience, and everybody loves street parking. So it kind of does triple duty in that regard. So that parking lane would have a buffer between it and 2 5-foot lanes in the form of cycle track. So I just want to go back real quick because there's another large development coming online here, the Rock Island Bridge, which is going to be sort of act as like a trailhead and an entertainment district, and being able to provide multimodal service to that and these other developments we thought was sort of a forward-thinking approach to that. Okay, so and here's Bailey about Avenida Cesar Chavez.
Yeah, Avenida Cesar Chavez will connect on the west side to American Royal Drive and then go on the east toward Jefferson Street. And if you go to the next slide, the existing conditions here, there's a median in the middle, just concrete median, and then you have 2 driving lanes in each direction. There are lots of houses along this corridor, some community centers and churches on the south side of the street. And these wide driving lanes on the outside, they kind of serve as unofficial parking areas right now. The road is very wide, and that's existing conditions. And our proposed facility, after conversations with the community, we've decided to add parking onto this street, so it's a little bit more official and marked, so that is more clear where the parking is, and then it'll be 1 driving lane in each direction, and then buffered bicycle lanes along the outside. So you can see a 6-foot bicycle lane, that 2-foot buffer, a parking lane, and then the driving lane in the middle. And so this will still maintain access to all of those community centers and the different intersections along here, and will help to make the crossings along this corridor safer as the community. This road kind of goes through the middle of West Side, so we're trying to make it safer for that community and provide a slower environment around there. So I'll kick it over to Bobby.
Yep, thank you very much. So going from an example of sort of an older street in Kansas City that we needed to make updated to be a little bit more legible and safe, we also sought opportunities like this one on Cherry Street, where there's an existing bike facility here on Cherry, and it's going to run from Charlotte to 2nd Street. And so existing, what you've got right now is we have bike lanes sort of at the curb on the outside lane, as you say, and then 12-foot driving lanes in each direction. But then we have this large painted buffer, and it varies in size, but like roughly 12 feet of roadway space is taken up by that buffer. And so what we wanted to do is seek an opportunity to go through and find an existing bike facility and be able to make it safer. So what we did here, the proposal is to basically take that buffer space and have it serve the community better than just sitting there in the middle of the road. So what we're doing is we've kept the 2 12-foot driving lanes, so there's no vehicle capacity changes here at all. But we've added an on-street parking lane. Like I said, we sought opportunities to add or protect or enshrine, some of those lanes like the ones on Chavez that are 18 feet wide. You park there, you don't really know what you're going to get. Well, when you make it an official parking lane, it's going to be a lot more legible of a street, a safer place to park, and that's what we're getting here on Cherry Street as well. So we're able to add on-street parking and protect those existing bike facilities, which didn't have to go anywhere else. So yeah, we're excited to try to find more opportunities like this because they're kind of like easy wins to a certain degree, and these are well-loved bike facilities already, so we can do great by even making them even more safe.
Awesome. Yeah, our next corridor is kind of in the heart of downtown, Grand Boulevard from 10th Street to Truman Road. There's quite a few entertainment areas around here, from the T-Mobile Center to Power and Light and some other things along Grand. And this kind of has been a spinoff of Grand Boulevard, and some different complete streets studies and analysis has been done here. So our design kind of pairs off of that. The existing corridor, we have parking lanes along the outside curb, bike lanes next to the parking lanes, a buffered space with no vertical delineation, and 1 driving lane in each direction, and then a center turn lane. Just in general, again, this is a typical section. It changes as you approach intersections and different things, but a typical section of Grand. And then our proposed facility would be to protect the bicycle lanes and put them along the outside of the street, 6-foot lanes in each direction with that buffered space. Again, a marked parking lane and one drive lane in each direction. And then the center median strip of the traffic exclusion dome that you see there would just be a little bit of a resistance, so people don't go into that median area, and only turning vehicles for turn lanes are there. So that's our typical section for Grand Boulevard.
Okey-doke. So next I'm going to talk about Gregory Street, and similar to Cherry, this one was already happening, and we kind of adopted it into what we lovingly call the PBL program. So there's an existing facility. We kind of use some of their momentum, and they use a little bit of ours, and we're able to add protection to this. So this one would provide multimodal service from the trolley track trail there on Gregory over to Main Street. And this section of Gregory and Main, for those of you who know and those of you who don't, is kind of the area where you got like McLean's Bakery and Governor Stumpy's, and has a nice little kind of walkable neighborhood node type feel to it. So we wanted to be able to make this is going to provide safe multimodal service between these 2 points. So right now, Gregory, I made sure to put a parking lot on this image because there's a lot of surface parking lots in this area. So it's got sidewalks, and it's got 8-foot parking lanes on either side. They're not the most well utilized parking lanes, and it's got 2 12-foot driving lanes. And so this is one of the examples where we wound up not having parking in favor of a multimodal facility. Like I said, there's a lot of parking in this area, so nobody's going to be missing out. And one of the reasons why this facility ends at Main is because of just not enough room in the road because of a high parking demand at that sort of neighborhood node there at Main. So this one maintains the same amount of automobile capacity, but adds 2 buffered bike lanes in each direction.
Awesome. Our next facility, Bobby alluded to in the beginning when he was showing the map, but this one connects on each end to existing facilities, with Paseo on the north side at 77th Street, and then the trolley track trail on the south side. So this goes along Hickman Mills Road from 77th to Prospect, and then on Prospect from Hickman Mills to 85th. So if you go to the next slide, we will check out the existing conditions. Existing conditions along Hickman Mills Drive are 2 lanes in each direction, just a pretty wide road, no parking along the edges. So next slide. And our proposed section for Hickman Mills Drive is a protected bicycle lane along the outside of the road with 1 foot or 1 driving lane in each direction. And then next slide. For Prospect Avenue, this corridor has some houses along the west side of the street, 1 driving lane in each direction. Those are very wide lanes. There's some parking that happens along the west side of the street with those homes. So through community engagement with the Marble community, we have come up with our proposed facility on Prospect. So if you go to that one, we can see that we will have 1 driving lane in each direction, a parking lane on the west side of the street, and then a cycle track on the east side of the street, 4-foot bicycle lanes in each direction, and then a 2-foot buffer. And that ties into Hickman Mills Drive, where it changes to the separated bike lanes there.
Sorry, yeah, I just wanted to address Zach Brown had a comment about the images. We used Street Mix because it is a very convenient way to express these things. I'm a big fan. It doesn't have everything that you need. So yeah, when you see the yellow bollard, the idea associated with that would be the same sort of bicycle lane protection that you've seen on Gillum. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you about an existing project that we've also adopted. I'm getting all the weird ones. So this one's we didn't really have a slick name for it because it goes on a bunch of different roads. So Missouri Avenue, Lexington Avenue. I think most people have referred to this as the Lexington Avenue Bike Facility. So it starts over here at Missouri Avenue in Paseo, then takes a left north up Maple Boulevard, which then turns into Lexington Avenue, and then it finishes up at the intersection of LaBelle Drive and Bellefontaine Ave, which rolls off the tongue quite nicely. So typical section for this area, on Missouri Ave is, again, those tweener lanes. They're wide. They don't know if it's one. You don't know if it's two. Is it two 10-footers? Is it a regular lane with a parking lane? You don't really know. And so it's like a lot less legible for people, especially if it's their first time in the area or maybe it's dark. So one of the things we wanted to do is, one of the goals in a lot of this is to sort of program all the space on the road to make it very clear what you should be doing whenever you're riding down the street. On Lexington Avenue, this street was built for a different era. Cars were smaller. There were fewer of them on the road. You could get away with a 9-foot drive lane that might also serve as a parking lane, depending on how the person was feeling at the moment. It's got sidewalks on either side, and this part, it's residential, but it's got a couple of nodes that we wanted to make sure that, through the community engagement, their concerns were honored by changing the design a lot. And this one's still in sort of like final design phase right now, and a lot of these are. This one's been worked on a lot. We've put a lot of effort into making sure that this serves the community in the way that is the most appropriate. And I'm sorry, that middle portion, again, Maple Boulevard, those tweener lanes, 15 feet. So the proposal, so this is like a typical section. In general, the idea is that they will be parking on one side of the street and a protected cycle track on the other side of the street. So there was a big issue at the coffee shop, which I believe is at Olive Street. And at that point, right now, the plan is to have it kind of go up and be sort of a multi-use path. And so this would be this is looking west. This would be on the cycle track would be on the north side of the street. So being able to accommodate safe bicycle movements in this area, but also, the businesses and residents there. So that's what sort of drove a lot of this design. And like I said, this one was already ongoing, and we adopted it into our PBL program.
Awesome. Yeah. Next, we'll talk about Longview Parkway, which is in the southeast part of our city down by Longview Lake. This facility already has bike lanes on it, but we're taking this opportunity to protect them and just kind of alter the road with a little change here. So if you see the existing conditions, we have a big grassy median in the middle, one driving lane in each direction, a bicycle lane, and then a parking lane along the outside of the street. So there's no separation or buffer between the bicycle lane and the driving lane. So if you go to the next slide, our proposal is to take away the parking lane on this street, since no parking is used along Longview Parkway. Utilization is very small out there. And so we'll put the bike lanes along the outside, make them nice and wide at 8 feet with a nice large separation, and still keeping one lane in each direction. So this just offers a safer, more comfortable ride for those getting out to Longview Lake.
Thanks. So yeah, similarly, Raytown Road, which actually connects to that Longview Parkway facility, would go from 107th Street heading south to the Grandview border. Right now, there's a whole lot of road. And so what it looks like right now, you got this 15-foot sort of planting strip median in the middle, and then two 12-foot drive lanes. And then there's like a 6-foot painted buffer between the cars and the bikes. And then there's 13 feet separating the bikes from sort of the wilderness. The proposal would simply add protection. So this one's kind of and like I said, an easy win. Existing bike facility that we're able to add protection to.
Awesome. Another corridor kind of in the core of downtown, Oak Street. This connects on the south side to the existing Gillum Road cycle track and then extends north to 12th Street. So it goes by on the east side of T-Mobile Center and continues that Gillum Road cycle track further into the core of downtown. So existing on Oak Street, we have 2 lanes in each direction, with the outside lanes being quite wide and kind of serving as some street parking right now. And there are lots of businesses and different things along this corridor, as well as some parking lots along here as well. So if you go to the next slide. For our proposed section, we will be narrowing those lanes, allowing for one traffic lane in each direction, with a center turn lane that alternates which way it's turning, of course, and then making those parking lanes more official along the outside of the street with the cycle track on the east side of the street, just so it ties into Gillum nicely. So that's the proposed section for Oak Street.
Awesome. Okay, Truman Road. This is an example of a pre-planned project that we are trying to make good on. So Truman Road came out of the MARC PSP program. If you're not familiar, that's the Planning Sustainable Places program. MARC's got a competitive grant program where they give money to the communities in their jurisdictions to plan for sustainable projects. And in this particular instance, I believe it was 2018, they finished the Truman Road Complete Streets PSP. And the extents of this are from Holmes Road to Benton Boulevard. So a nice east-west connection. Parts of this, most of this road doesn't have anywhere near the amount of traffic to necessitate this number of lanes. We've got 3 lanes in each direction, and this outside lane on either side is what I lovingly call peaked parking. So you can park there any time of the day except for during the peak hour, which also known as rush hour. But you got 2 lanes and then a center turn lane. And so right now we're working on a couple different proposals, but the one we're showing is basically maintaining the 2 driving lanes, the center turn lane, and then adding protected bike facilities on the outside. However, we're trying to potentially reassess this one to allow for parking, because that, you know, I've said my piece about parking already. Don't need to belabor the point, but we're trying to see what we can do to make sure that we add those parking lanes to Truman. We'd love to hear from folks who know and care about Truman, what you think about the potential, you know, difference between having parking on that road relative to the bike lanes and the general sort of state of things and not having parking on that street. But you know what? I take that back. Sorry, I want to be very clear. This existing facility, this proposed facility, this outside lane would be that peaked parking. So you would be able to park there during the day and then not during rush hour.
Awesome. So our final facility that we're talking about today is Wyandotte Street, which on the north ties to Penn Valley Park at 31st Street and then goes south to Linwood Boulevard. This is a very low volume road that we're just looking to add a facility on. So if you go to the next slide, existing are just 1 lane in each direction. They're quite wide, so there's ample street parking along this road. There are some parking lots along the east side of the street, and then on the west side, it's more forested with some utility poles running along there. For a proposed facility, we'd put the cycle track on the west side of the street, allowing for that 1 lane in each direction still, and kind of allowing for that unofficial street parking to happen due to the low volume of this road, but still protecting the cyclists along this street.
Yeah, sorry, just to jump in. We heard from someone who lives, the back of their house is this area, because we couldn't represent a hill on street mix. It's got some limitations, obviously, but it's got this is like a big hill, and we spoke with a resident who lives, their backyard is this hill, and they're required to do significant brush cleanup once a year to be able to you know, maintain standards set by the city. And so that's something that we're currently trying to sort of reevaluate associated with this facility is those maintenance needs. And I think that goes to another point that was brought up a bunch yesterday. And I wanted to just note that we're doing better on maintenance. It's part of this plan. We're doing better on transit connectivity. It's part of this plan. Those things are a really big deal. And additionally, the same thing goes with sort of the relationship between protected bike facilities and intersections. I mean, we're constantly learning from a design perspective about what works, what hasn't. And a great part of that learning experience comes from hearing from folks in meetings and having conversations with people and doing rides and site visits and things. So we're trying to do the best that we can, and this round will be better than the last, and the next one will be better than this, and we're constantly working to make it better.
Thank you both so much, and I'm loving the chat discussion. I've been taking a long list of some of the themes, so we'll get to that in just a minute. Wanted to quickly touch on what our engagement plan has been so far. We have had one-on-one meetings with nearly all of the council members to talk about this plan, to share this with them, to make sure that their input is incorporated throughout. So we also sent out a mailer notification letter to properties and neighborhood groups that are along these corridors as well, so that they're informed of the progress, the public meetings and where to go to get more information. Of course, we hosted a meeting last night and today. Those will be posted on the website by the end of the day today is the goal. And then, of course, on each corridor, we know that direct stakeholder outreach is important as well. We are taking meetings with neighborhood groups or stakeholders who want to learn more and dive into the details. So that's sort of our approach for the community engagement piece of the strategy and of our plan. Next slide. So we will end with timeline next steps. Our public meetings will conclude after today. We anticipate that the ordinance will be introduced for City Council's deliberation and discussion this week, which means it will be at committee discussion next Wednesday, the 20th. And we will post more information that'll be available on the city clerk's website, as well as we'll try to get it over on the Bike KC website as well. So that's yet another opportunity for folks to testify, submit testimony in support or with additional comments about this plan. But City Council will likely vote on this within the next few weeks, and that we hope to start construction this summer on these corridors. So very excited to get moving on this and to continue the momentum that's underway. And we again appreciate all of the lively discussion in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and start with a few themes that I noticed and wrote down in the chat. So Public Works colleagues, one of the things that came up was about data collection. And if you can share a little bit about what the plan is for bike counts and collecting data pre and post on these corridors.
We can take it. Yeah. For our data collection, I guess, methodology, we'll look at two different things: crash data, both before and after facilities are introduced, not just bicycle crashes, but also vehicle to vehicle crashes, analyzing 3 years prior and analyzing as we go, year to year afterward. And then volume counts, like going out once a year to collect bicycle volumes along these corridors to see how they increase and how the users are using them, and get feedback that way. So that's kind of our plan with our data collection. And if you have interest on knowing more about that, feel free to email me about that.
Thanks, Bailey. Another question and theme that popped up is about maintenance in regards to the vertical delineators, but also, sweeping and the grit. I think I read grit several times in the chat. So can any of my colleagues speak to sort of what's in the works, what equipment we're looking at purchasing, and how we're developing our maintenance strategy?
Yeah, I can jump in here. Jason Waldron, Transportation Director in Public Works. Maintenance can be a challenge, but that challenge is not exclusive to bike lanes. Maintenance can be a challenge for sidewalks and roadways. And in order to have a comprehensive transportation network, we need all of those things. So we are getting better at it. We are being more collaborative with other departments. We had a recent conversation as late as last week with the Parks Department. I think I personally have witnessed an improvement, but looking forward, we do have to be better, and maintenance across citywide, and we are getting better. We are going to be looking in investments in equipment that are better suited for these spaces and these widths. I saw in the chat and recognize I'm very jealous. North Kansas City recently purchased a bike lane sweeper. Those are the kind of things that KCMO wants to do as well.
Thanks so much, Jason. Okay, another question someone had earlier on was what sort of, you mentioned North Kansas City just a second ago, Jason. What other partnerships are we working with across the state line or with other municipalities? Are there conversations underway for a larger regional strategy? I'll let you all chime in as well, Maggie, Bobby, and Bailey, but I'm not aware of any. We have a couple projects going on that kind of fit that bill. One, Bobby, I believe, already mentioned last night or today, I can't remember. But there is a private development going on with that existing
truss rail bridge over the Kansas River. That's going to become a destination, and there's a number of dollars being put into the trails in and around that river. So we are indirectly coordinating with KCK to make sure that we're both connected to that destination on both sides of the river. I do know, not directly related, but we are taking more of a regional approach with the dockless scooters, with KCK and others, trying to be under the same umbrella, so our users don't have to stop at city and county lines. I don't know, Bobby and Bailey, Maggie, I feel like I might be leaving something out. Those are the top of mind collaborations I can think of.
Same.
Yep. Thanks, Jason. Okay, another question that was further on in the chat. What is an acceptable drop or reduction in level of service for intersection operations when we are looking at geometry changes due to bike facilities?
You know, that is a really good question, and it's one, you know, it's always been traditionally counting cars, right? Not people, and not pedestrians, not bicyclists, but how many cars are going through an intersection. And there is, you know, some new thoughts on that, and so we do have some level of service grades and analysis that we will do on all of this to understand the capacity of these corridors and intersections. But we're not going to let that be the only metric of whether this serves the community or not. 2 weeks ago, I did a field walk with a neighborhood that absolutely insisted that they did not want those types of metrics determining what's best for them in their neighborhood. In other words, they didn't want a high speed, high volume roadway going through their neighborhood. And so those are the kind of things that we're going to, you know, it's a balancing act, and we're going to take in all the inputs and try to get the temperature just right.
Thanks so much. Someone earlier on mentioned, are we coordinating with off-street paths and trails, and are there plans underway to make connections or any trail projects? Don't know if, Jason, you want to speak at all to that? I know that the Parks Department does a lot of the trail work. We're actively coordinating with them, but they do a lot of the management on the trails and off-street path network.
You know, I got to confess, I was distracted by the chat. Very interesting, and I really appreciate the dialogue. So is the question, do we have some new trails in the works?
Yeah, so, you know, what we discussed today is mostly all on-street facilities. So someone was asking about, is there a plan or what's the plan for off-street trails and paths?
Yeah, no, that's part of it, right? And you know, when we talk about different communities, there's areas of this city who would prefer those off street and off paths, and there's area of the city that lend themselves, the right of way lends themselves to that stuff. I can't rattle the trails off because we have been a little more focused on some of our other transportation priorities, but I absolutely do know that we have some active trail designs and construction projects in the Northland that are funded and that are happening. So I think what we have in the Northland in particular is a number of segments that need to be connected. And in addition to that, we have a great existing facility south of the river with the Trolley Track Trail that you can see with Gillum, and you can see with Hickman Mills and Prospect, that we're trying to tie one of the crown jewels of our transportation network, the Trolley Track Trail, into the bike lane network.
Thanks so much. Another question was, someone was asking about, do we have design considerations to not block the protected facilities so that cyclists can get in and out easily? And I kind of wanted to address what I think that person was asking. So if you could go back maybe a couple of slides and show a photo of Gillum, and we can see the curb stop is separated by a few feet from the vertical delineators. So there actually is a little place where bikes can enter and exit.
Oh,
the way
wrong
we
one.
have.
Sorry.
It's okay.
It's a big
but
presentation.
Jason, I know last night you mentioned our standard sort of is that, you know, here we go, the curb stop with the delineator. Didn't know if you could talk about that, you know, standard and the materials that we're using a little bit.
Yeah, no, honestly, I think the question was in regards to the parking separated, parking protected bike lanes that you see on Gillum and portions on, that you see on Armour and portions of Gillum. That Armor was a big lesson learned. I don't think anybody on this call was directly involved with that particular project, but we still carry the lessons that were learned, and to provide enough adequate sight distance for all modes of transportation, not just cars, to have that adequate sight distance. I think you can see some of our improved approach on the Gillum sections. We did provide for more sight distance if you go to the south leg of Gillum, and we also obviously adjusted Armor. So Bobby said it, we're learning, and we're every time you do something, we get the idea is to get better at it, and I think these bike lanes are no exception to that. So you're going to see additional sight distance at these intersections to that person's point.
Awesome, thanks. I think that kind of got at another question about visibility at intersections and, you know, making sure we're adjusting parking to make the visibility paramount at the intersections. So I think.
And yeah, I mean, anyone in Kansas City knows daylighting intersections is a big deal, even where there aren't bike infrastructure, right? Like people park right up at the curb return and you can't always see. So that's a concern all over the place. Sorry,
Yeah,
Jason.
Oh, no, I do think I missed the mark in the previous, and because you reminded me, Maggie, of some of the chat that I saw about our standard. It is cost effective. We could do more, we could do less, but for right now, for this next year, this is the standard that you're going to see, whether it be a cycle track or one direction bike lane. And what we're trying to do is you've got the concrete precast bumper, right? And what that's doing is providing for that physical protection. But we also added the vertical delineators for that visual, for not just motorists, but, you know, it seems like every Thursday it snowed this winter and in the spring. And so when we have our snow plows out, that really helps protect this asset when you got a couple inches of snow on the ground and it's hard to see.
And I know it's 12:58, so we're running out of time. I'm sure people with 1 o'clocks have to pop off. So if you're heading out, just want to say thank you. I do want to go through a couple more questions while we have another minute. Someone in the chat was mentioning how do we plan to address right turns and notifying drivers about right turns for oncoming bikers, any signage or flashing lights that we're looking at adding to address right turns.
You know, that I understand, you know, the value of some of those restrictions and adding additional investment. And, you know, this isn't going to shock anyone. You know, we only have so many dollars and we're trying to get the most value out of those dollars. So my personal answer is on that is that is something we have to do kind of a case by case. It's not an approach we would be able to do at every intersection. But I think when we do these data collections and we learn and we get more experience with these things, I think it'll be individual location assessments. We're certainly not against doing those things. It's just a matter of, like I said, just getting it right and spreading our dollars the most efficiently we can.
Thanks so much, Jason. And I'm trying to see if anybody has joined via the phone that didn't have access. Looks like we might have one person joined by phone. I know it's 1 o'clock, but wanted to just offer, if you press *6, if you had a comment or question for folks who might be joined on the phone who didn't have access to the chat. Nope. Okay. Well, with that, I want to thank everyone personally for your time, for your thoughtful comments and discussion in the chat, your ideas. Please do feel free to reach out to Bobby Bailey, myself, Jason, with any additional ideas, concerns, suggestions. We'd love to hear from you. We appreciate the thoughtful comments today, and we'll definitely be in touch, and we look forward to continuing to build out the bike network. But colleagues, didn't know if you wanted to add anything else in closing, but thanks.
Yeah, thank you all for being here, and feel free to reach out with other things like Maggie said.
Agreed. Yeah. Holler at us. Talk to you soon. Thanks.
Thanks so much.